Life in society had become more like a science fiction movie than anyone could have predicted. It started off with simple technological advancements, like a pocket computer or a voice-activated assistant. But as time passed, those advancements became more invasive, until it was a mandatory expectation for every citizen to have a chip implanted in their brain, regulating every aspect of their lives. Despite being born into this world, I had always been wary of the implant. There was something that didn't sit well with me about the idea of having my thoughts and emotions controlled by a machine, always in the background of my conscious mind. So I made the decision to reject the implant when I was old enough, knowing the risks it could bring. At first, it was just a matter of avoiding detection, jumping through hoops and dealing with inconveniences that came with not having the chip. But as I grew older, I found myself among the ranks of the rebels, those who refused the implant and actively fought against the system they found so oppressive. The authorities labelled us as terrorists, going so far as to dub us the untethered. We were seen as a danger to societal order, and all of our movements were closely surveilled. It wasn't safe for us to stay in one place for too long, so we bounced around from safe house to safe house, never quite feeling secure. Despite the danger we were in, we remained hopeful. We weren't the only ones who felt that something was wrong with the machine, dictating our thoughts and actions. And we had made connections throughout underground circles that promised us a better way of life, one free from the shackles of technology. It was on a particularly sticky summer evening when things changed. We had been holed up in a secure location outside of town, but we had started to let our guard down. We had made the mistake of getting too comfortable, forgetting that the authorities were always watching us. The first sirens were the signal that something was wrong. We scattered, each of us taking different paths in the hopes that we'd be able to escape what was coming. My heart was pounding in my chest as I sprinted down unfamiliar alleyways, my breaths coming in ragged gasps. It wasn't until I heard a loud thwack that I knew I'd been hit by something non-lethal and slumped to the ground, dazed and disoriented. I woke up in a holding cell with the buzz of machines and the whirring of gears overpowering every other sound. I knew what had happened, knew that I'd been caught and taken to one of the government's headquarters for reprogramming. My heart sank as I looked around the room, noticing the blank stares on the faces of those around me. It was as if they had been lobotomized, the chip effectively wiping away any semblance of a personality they may have once had. Even while being held captive, they were still under the total control of the government. But something within me refused to give up hope. I'd always thought that there was a better way, one that didn't involve being subjugated to a piece of technology that could never truly understand what it was like to be human. Even as I felt the chip being forcibly inserted into my brain, I knew that I couldn't surrender. It was a long process being reprogrammed. The first few days were the hardest, the chip digging into my consciousness and ripping away any semblance of resistance. But as time passed, I began to realise that there was still a spark of rebellion left inside of me. I began to make small, calculated moves, pushing against the constraints that had been placed on me. It wasn't until one day, as I was being monitored during a checkup, that I was able to put my plan into action. I had been pretending to be fully reprogrammed, but as soon as the nurse had stepped out of the room, I slipped out of my restraints and made a beeline for the door. It was a blur after that, my feet pounding down the sterile halls as alarms blared, and I knew I was being pursued. But I was determined, knowing that if I could just make it out of these walls, I could make a difference. When I finally made it to the outer door and pushed it open, I was hit with a sudden barrage of fresh air and sunlight. It was a sensation that I'd almost forgotten, having spent my days charting through sterile and technological environments. As I took my first step into the outside world, there was a sense of both trepidation and exhilaration coursing through me. It wasn't going to be easy to fight against something that had so thoroughly entrenched itself into the society I was born in. But I had hope, I had determination, I had the possibility of a future free from the chains of technology.